Steve Gardner from USA Today. Does a great job covering baseball, hanging out with the Tigers. Fun and Sun. What's going on, pal?
Hey, man, it's baseball season. There are games going on. It's great.
I know. I told you it's more authentic when we get the crowd background, the crowd noise in the background. Just a couple for you. I know you're busy. Let's get into the Phillies for a moment, because you look at last year, they got the most out of the starting rotation, especially the first several months of the season. Kind of faded in the second half of the season. Some issues with the bullpen. Genmar Gomez kind of stumbled down the stretch in 2016. But manager Pete Mackinnon said, listen, I'm going to end all the speculation. Forget about open competition in spring training. He'll be the front runner for the ninth inning role. I mean, you've got a couple other players that you can look at as well with the Phillies in that regard with Hector Neris. But again, I mean, how about Gomez going forward in that role for the Phillies, especially if these pitchers can't go, 6-7 strong like they were before?
Yeah, I don't know that that's one of the most pressing issues that the Phillies need to work on or solve at this point in the season. It's the bullpen, and early on the bullpen gets tested, and everybody will get a chance to pitch. So I think, overall they strengthened it in the offseason, and I think that, Gomez, I guess he deserves the opportunity to close, but certainly his leash doesn't have to be long if the pitcher that he was the last month of the season rather than the first five.
You think we're going to see Crawford this year? I mean, he's one of the top prospects in all in baseball. We saw what he was able to do in AAA last season. He's on the cusp of his big league debut, and he didn't, he didn't hit well after he was promoted from AA. And I'm just wondering, what he's probably going to have to show enough in spring. You look at his numbers probably going forward. They're probably going to be most likely better already than Freddie Galvis with the glove and the bat. But I mean, what's the thought? What's the anticipation of possibly seeing Crawford this year?
I think probably late in the season, maybe a September call-up. The Phillies have no real reason to push him beyond, the normal growth pattern, and they can leave Galvis there and be fine. So I think Crawford's one of those guys that you want to see develop, and you don't want to have him feel overmatched. I think his bat certainly needs, if he's going to be a major leaguer or when he's going to be a major leaguer, his bat needs to be completely ready, and I don't think we've seen that so far yet. So another year, most of the year at least, at AAA, I think will be good for him. And when he does, if he does have a lot of success there at AAA, then I think the Phillies can feel comfortable promoting him then probably late in the season in September.
The Mets are interesting to me because if they can get all their hurlers back and keep them healthy out of the training room, then they can certainly help guide this team into the postseason. And I'm just wondering, we've seen this before with this team, right? I mean, we've seen it in baseball. It's strong enough with Syndergaard, DeGrom. Harvey might be a little iffy, but Matz. I mean, to me, I just think if anything, they'll have a little, they'll have some offense this year, but it always comes down to the starting pitching. And I think this is kind of a make or break for these guys this year for the Mets.
Yeah, I would agree. And the fact that, so many of them are having, have health issues entering this season, I think the key for the Mets is, can they get the good starts that they got from Robert Gesellman and Seth Lugo this season? I think they're going to need both of those guys to make a handful of starts. I can't see all five of the guys that they penciled into the starting rotation making a full season's worth of starts. So they're going to need, number 6 and number 7 starters to come in and give them some relief there. And I think if that happens and they can, maybe take it easy, and if Harvey, for instance, needs a disabled list for a little while, or if DeGrom does, or Wheeler, certainly Wheeler will probably not be able to give him a full season. And I think those two guys, Lugo and Gesellman, will be huge pieces of the puzzle, and they can help that starting five make it into the postseason. And if they're anywhere close to fresh and healthy, look out.
Yeah, and conversely, too, with the offense, I think it's also a big year for Lucas Duda. I mean, you talk about a player that lost 4 months of the season because of that stress fracture in his lower back. He returned to play 8 games over the final 2 weeks of the season. You're hoping to get some power from that first baseman side. So, to me, I also think we already know Granderson's always that notoriously slow starter as well at the plate. Again, who knows what they're going to get from David Wright. So, To me, Duda is also one of those potential keys in that offensive cog.
Yep, I think so. And Wilmer Flores is pretty good against left-handed pitchers, so that forms a nice little platoon. One interesting thing for me is, if I were the Mets, I would love to be able. If I were a Mets fan, I would love to see Michael Conforto get a shot at some point in regular playing time. And the interesting thing for me is, if they're not able to trade Jay Bruce, which they tried to do this offseason, he was getting some work at first base, taking ground balls. If Jay Bruce can give them some time at first base and open up an outfield spot for Conforto, that's where I think the Mets could really have an interesting lineup and a pretty solid offense. So that's something to keep an eye on if that little experiment with Bruce at first gains any traction this spring.
How about with the Yankees now from one New York team to another with Greg Bird? He's going to take over for retired Mark Teixeira at first base. Bird was playing basically by the time I think the last edition of the Arizona Fall League rolled around. So he's definitely going to compete for some playing time with Austin. They signed Chris Carter, the veteran slugger, strikes out a lot. You got Gary Sanchez. To me, you always need production, I think. And we saw him last year, late season, turned it on. I think he hit 11 homers in 46 games. So how about, some of those aforementioned players that I mentioned and Bird going into the season for the Yankees?
Yeah, it's an interesting season for the Yankees because, they can never fully rebuild, which I think, Brian Cashman, if he had his druthers, he'd like to be able to do that, but he can't. And that's where, the Matt Holliday signing comes in. It's where the Chris Carter signing comes in. I think they got good values on both of those guys. I think with Bird, though, they would love to have him be their everyday first baseman. But it's probably not going to happen just coming back from the injury. They don't want to push him too far, and that's where, Carter will get some time at first base. I think what we'll see a lot of is, Carter is a terrible defensive first baseman, so he'll get some starts against left-handed pitchers and probably come out for Bird defensively in the later innings. So I think, Bird is going to be one of those key guys for the Yankees because if he can give them, close to a full season, I know they don't want to push him too much, but he's their best bet at first base. And if they can have, Carter coming off the bench and being a pinch hitter or Carter splitting some time with Holliday or something like that, I think that makes them a better team. And having Bird in the lineup is certainly important to them for that.
Couple minutes with Steve Gardner from USA Today. Last one for you. I know you're down there with Detroit, little Grapefruit League action. What are they taking on? They're playing Florida Southern right now?
Yes, they are. And they just scored a run. So the
things are looking up for the Tigers.
That's right. Exactly.
How about Jordan Zimmerman? You always talk about players. We don't like to say the players on the hot seat, the skipper's on the hot seat, but how about Jordan Zimmerman? Because you look at the start for the first 2-3 months of the season last year, he was going to put up a banner year, pitched exceptionally well through 10 starts, and then struggled. Strikeout rate went down. I think he was in and out of the rotation, went 1-5 over his last 5-9 outings. There's a lot of money invested in Jordan Zimmerman. How much pressure on him going forward for this starting rotation of the Tigers is there to perform?
Yeah, there's a decent amount. He's got to be one of the keys to the Tigers' success, I think, this season. Justin Verlander showed that he's still an ace last year with the way that he pitched. But yeah, Zimmerman, they've got to have some support in that starting rotation. And the rest of the guys, I don't know. It seems like there's all question marks there. So I think with Zimmerman, at least he's done it before. He doesn't have the overpowering stuff and never did, when he was putting up really good numbers in Washington. So he's going to have to be more of a pitcher, and he has to stay healthy. And, that's one of the things that the Tigers are really looking forward to is a 100% season for Jordan Zimmerman.
There's nothing like I can hear the bat crack in the background. So there's nothing like spring is in the air, baseball is right around. It just seems like we were talking about the World Series.
I know. The off season was busy, but it's great to see the games actually arriving again.
Absolutely. We got a ton to talk about going forward for the season. Appreciate a couple moments. Enjoy it out there. Always good insight, my friend.
You bet. Thanks, Rick.
You got it. You got it. You too, pal. Be well. Steve Gardner, good stuff from USA Today. A little baseball talk with him.